Still with us, former Department of Justice senior attorney and former federal prosecutor Tammy Allison, and now joining us, child welfare parenting expert Dr. John DeGarmo. John, let me start with you and tell you that, yes, I know you're here for a special segment that we're going to do next, but I wanted to bring you in on this case, and here's why. If the allegations are proven to be true and the things that Alex's ex shared with the police, and that includes things like inappropriate sexual simulation between two adult siblings, biological siblings, and talking to each other about their sex life all the time, and a third thing, possible sexual abuse of a pig, are there any red flags that suggest to you what happened in their life that they think this is okay?
How many red flags do you want? There's so many red flags there. So many times this is just generational. And my first thought is, what happened to these two early in their childhood for them to do this at this age in their life?
That's exactly what I thought. Because when you hear of these kinds of behaviors, typically they've had trauma to them in their childhood that results in this. All right, Tammy, talk to me about the legal implications, if this is correct and these allegations prove to be true. What does that do for or against Lori Vallow's legal case?
As far as the legalities, I believe that the phone call made by her brother's ex-wife, this is a call that she initiated to investigators when she heard about the story in the media. I think that it could shed light for the state whenever they're prosecuting Lori, if in fact it does go to trial, because we know that things are put on hold because of her mental state right now. But given the allegations that she's made, I don't necessarily believe that it's going to make or break the case as it relates to the murders of the two children. I think that, as you stated, two adults, whether they're siblings or not, if they want to engage in an incestuous relationship, that's their business. I think what's more important is the information that she may have as it pertains to the murder of her fourth husband and how that would implicate Lori as being guilty for not only the deaths of her two children, but the fourth husband, given that relevant evidence that this ex-wife could bring forward. However, given the fact that she was only living with her brother for about 5 months and they were married for only a year, I think that the defense would be able to poke holes in her story, because this is an ex-wife and a lot of exes have revenge or a vendetta or some type of ulterior motive as far as coming forward out of the blue all of a sudden to make these types of allegations when she already knew that there were custody issues going on where she could have brought that stuff up. But I did want to say one other thing. As a survivor of childhood abuse myself, I don't want our viewers to see or think that it's normal for individuals that are survivors to engage in incestuous relationships with siblings or to have a propensity to engage in that type of behavior themselves just because they have been exposed to that type of trauma themselves. As we all know, that I am very well accomplished as an attorney, and I definitely don't engage in that type of behavior.
Tammy, thank you so much for saying that and educating, because that's part of the goal of this, because I have, unfortunately, too many people in my life that have been victims, and they say exactly what you say. It doesn't matter if you've been a victim or not. It doesn't mean you're going to be an abuser, nor does it mean that it justifies that. So I so appreciate that you did clarify that for us today. I want to thank you, Tammy, for all of your great insight, expertise today. Tammy Allison and John, you're going to stick around because you're going to help us highlight some of the youngest victims when some brothers were forced to live alongside the skeletal remains of another sibling. So what's happening with the parents? That's coming up next here on Court TV. It's now time to shine a light on the youngest victims. This is where we focus on the crimes committed against our most innocent children. In this case, an 8-year-old Texas boy, skeleton remains were found in an apartment with blunt force injuries, which has now been ruled a homicide. To make it worse, his other 3 brothers were found alive inside that same apartment, and now their mother has been arrested and charged with injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence. Her boyfriend, however, Brian Coulter, has been charged with murder. The horrific story unfolded when the 15-year-old sibling, boy in the house, called the police to tell them that he and his brothers were living alone in an apartment and had been for months. All this while the skeletal remains of his younger brother were in the other room in the same apartment. According to the sheriff's office, the younger children appeared to be malnourished and had physical injuries. Our affiliate KTRK spoke with some neighbors in that apartment complex.
A living nightmare inside this apartment filled with twisted secrets. Neighbors knew the situation in this apartment wasn't normal, but they never imagined the true horror inside. 3 boys abandoned by their mother, living with the remains of what investigators believe to be their dead sibling.
But I had no idea that it was a skeleton in the house. I never saw those other kids.
The Harris County Sheriff's Office says the rent kept getting paid, but the mother hasn't been back in months. The 15-year-old relying on his neighbor, Erica Chapman, who started giving him food 6 months ago.
He would not eat anything that you made. You had to buy it. Like, it had to be a salad that was closed from the store, or a pizza, fruits. It had to still be in a bag.
Another resident at City Park 2 at West Oaks Apartments, Troy Thompson, also was feeding him. He once got a glance inside the apartment.
The house is empty. It's not furnished. It's just like trash, like debris from chips, pizza boxes.
Without electricity, the 15-year-old asked Thompson to charge a cell phone shortly before calling 911 on Sunday.
The last time when I charged the phone, I asked him, is everything all right? He was like, yes, sir. So then I asked him, were you going somewhere? He said, probably, and then he walked away. And about 7 minutes later, the police pulled up.
Investigators say the skeletal remains have been in the apartment for a year. Both Chapman and Thompson had no idea about the dark secrets the 15-year-old was living with.
Why do you think he didn't tell people he had these brothers?
After finding out what happened yesterday, I think he was more nervous and scared. Hey, are they going to blame me for this? Are my parents going to punish me for this?
Still with us, a very special guest, foster care expert, Dr. John DeGarmo. You know, John, no matter how long I do this, and I think I've heard it all because I've done child welfare for so many years, I still want to throw up when I hear these details because people don't think this can really happen, right? Like, there's no way this is true. Who abandons their children without food, without electricity, and one of them dead from a blunt force injury in the same apartment? But it happens, and this is not the only instance of it.
You know, we talk about it takes a community to raise a village to raise a child. This is where the village failed this family. So many people are responsible for this. The neighbors, if the child is coming to the neighbors asking for food, after a while there should be some suspicion. The neighbors should have reported it. Where were the people who owned this building? If the person who stepped inside and saw the mess in the house, where was he reporting? Where is the school? You know, teachers are mandated reporters. These children are missing school. If they're enrolled in a school, why isn't the school on here? Where are the caseworkers? Where are the child welfare agencies? Where are the police? Where are the members of the church, faith-based people in this community? The entire community failed these children. It could have been prevented.
That's what you and I talk a lot about is prevention, and it could have been prevented. So let's talk a little bit, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I feel compelled to mention that because of the pandemic, because of COVID, it does mean a lot of schools, as we know, went virtual. And in that case, I think that some of the kids, you know, they don't see, touch, smell the kids every day, the teachers. And we also have child welfare workers that are on restriction in terms of actually going and seeing kids face to face because, again, of a pandemic. And so I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying I think that's one more layer of how these things get missed. But to your point, reporting. I just want to say, you and I have said this before on this show, people have to report. Yes, they're afraid. Yes, they're scared. Yeah, they don't want to get involved. But guess what? If you have any suspicion that something's amiss with kids, there's a responsibility in my book, right, even if you're not mandated, to report it. It's anonymous. Let the system do its job. Should a system have to raise children? No. Should a system save children? 100%. 100%. But let's shift gears about these children, because part of what I want to pick your brain about today is the trauma that these children have gone through. And it goes all kinds of trauma. They have the physical abuse, they have the lack of food, they have the dirty home, they have no electricity, they have no parenting, no supervision. You've got a 15-year-old likely parentified because he's raising the younger siblings. You've got the emotional neglect, you've got the medical neglect, because one of the children's, I want to report for our viewers, actually had a broken jaw that needed medical attention. So that child had been abandoned in this apartment while needing medical attention. So there's so many different sources of trauma. We know that affects brain development. We know that it changes these children. How do you, and you've been a foster parent for years, how do these children heal? What can be provided to these children to help them heal?
Actually, it's a fantastic question. And the truth is this: it's going to take a very, very, very long time for these children to heal, if they ever fully heal from this. This is something where they're going to have consistent therapy, consistent counseling, perhaps for the rest of their life. This is something that the trauma is on so, as you mentioned, on so many different levels here. And let's go back just a minute here. The child, the brother, was dead for a year in the house. Think of the trauma of that alone.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that, and you add it all up and put it all together. And, it continually infuriates me that people have children that they choose to abuse and neglect. So let's talk about the mother and father the boyfriend and the mother for a minute. We just saw pictures. I hope those can come back up, because we know the boyfriend, and you see him there on your screen. I think it says Warrior on his neck. Warrior. He is the one charged with murder. But let's talk about this mother. Is she charged with other offenses? Yes, but she failed to protect these children. One of her children is dead, and she's abandoned them. So my question always is, and I'm always an advocate for, when the evidence exists, they needs to be charged. And so I'm just hopeful that they are considering, should she be charged with murder if the evidence exists? But what are your thoughts about seeing children in these circumstances and yet the parent not being charged with murder?
She's fully responsible. She's fully responsible. She left the children there. I think they said that the parents were gone for 6 months to a year. She left them there in that environment, fully cognizant of what was happening. She knew that her son was killed. She never reported it. She knew another son had a broken jaw, never reported it. She knows these children are not getting food, never reported it. She is fully responsible for this.
And I think there's even a more active engagement. She didn't just know these children weren't getting food. The evidence that we've heard so far is that she was, in fact, having some food delivered. The 15-year-old, the neighbor said, would go out and pick it up from Uber or whoever else delivered it and go back in. Same 15-year-old who went to neighbors to ask for food, because they also report it was primarily junk food. So there's even an active participation in the fact she abandoned the kids, one dead, the other with a broken jaw. You and I could be on a soapbox for the rest of the day. But let me come back to where we are and ask you, John, what else in the last 30 seconds do you want to say about this case and your advocacy for children?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier. The community failed these children. If the viewers here tonight, if you suspect something like this, not even on this grandiose scale, but if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected or abandoned near or where you live, you have to report it. You've got to stand up, because if not you, then who? If you're not going to be the advocate for that child, then who is? If you're not going to bring awareness to the situation, then who is? And this, sadly, is the result.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. John DeGarmo, I always appreciate having you on. I hope you'll come back as we continue to cover our youngest victims, because we certainly want to bring awareness to these crimes. Thank you so much for being with us today. I also want to thank all of you at home for joining us, including in the UK, Scotland, and Ireland. This is it for me today, but you don't want to go anywhere, because my esteemed colleague, Michael Ayala, will take over the anchor chair next. He will have more on what we're hearing from the jurors in the Derek Chauvin trial. You don't want to miss it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.